Anfield rose to welcome a new beginning. In the summer of 2026, after Arne Slot was dismissed, Liverpool, the reigning Premier League champions and one of Europe's most storied clubs, placed their future in the hands of Andoni Iraola, a coach who had climbed from the league's smallest club to football's biggest stage. Yet the contrast was impossible to ignore. This was a former right-back who never earned more than 6 caps for Spain, spent his entire playing career in the Basque Country, and retired without lifting a major trophy. Even Pep Guardiola once admitted that the most modern football he had seen was the game Bournemouth were playing under Iraola. So how does a man with such an ordinary playing resume convince one of football's greatest institutions that he is the right successor?
And what kind of quiet resilience is forged when your biggest credentials were never medals, but the courage to keep proving people wrong? Because Liverpool did not simply appoint a new manager. They entrusted their future to a story that almost nobody believed could ever reach this point. Iraola's story did not begin beneath the lights of Anfield. It began in Usurbil, a quiet Basque town where football was less about escaping home than protecting its identity. At Antiguoco, the same academy that also shaped Xabi Alonso and Mikel Arteta, coaches remembered something unusual about the young fullback. After training ended, he often stayed behind to practice dead ball deliveries with his weaker foot until the equipment staff started collecting cones around him. Nobody had asked him to.
He simply disliked leaving the pitch with the mistake still fresh in his mind. That habit followed him into Athletic Bilbao. For more than 510 first-team appearances, he rarely looked like the loudest player on the field. Yet there was an edge beneath the calm. Iraola was a right-back willing to take penalties, attack space before others noticed it, and absorb the relentless demands of Marcelo Bielsa before refining them under Ernesto Valverde. One coach stretched his physical limits. The other taught him when intensity should become control. Together, they quietly built the tactical language he would one day speak from the touchline. Then came the hardest decision. In 2015, at 33, Iraola left the Basque Country for the first time to join New York City FC. It looked like a modest final chapter to most observers. In reality, he was giving up far more than familiarity. He left the only club, the only culture, and the only footballing identity he had ever known, trading lifelong certainty for an unfamiliar dressing room thousands of miles away, without any guarantee that coaching, the dream forming quietly in the background, would ever become his future. There were no headlines waiting for Andoni Iraola. When he began coaching at AEK Larnaca before moving to Mirandés in Spain's Segunda División, the conversation around him was almost dismissive. Spanish newspapers covering the second tier repeatedly framed him as an inexperienced former defender whose name carried little weight beyond the Basque Country. Mirandés were flirting with relegation, and if the gamble failed, the club faced both the financial blow of dropping into the third tier and another managerial reset. Iraola never argued back. Instead, after training sessions had officially finished, assistants often found him dragging portable mannequins into new positions, asking the same pressing sequence to be repeated until every player's first step matched the trigger. The floodlights stayed on. His voice rarely rose. The drills did. That obsession slowly became an identity. Then came an even greater risk at Rayo Vallecano, one of La Liga's smallest budget clubs. Most newly promoted teams survive by retreating into a low block. Iraola chose the opposite. He ordered his team to press high against opponents with deeper squads and greater technical quality, knowing that if the system collapsed, he would almost certainly lose the dressing room, the supporters' trust, and perhaps his job before the season had truly begun.
The reward arrived one fearless performance at a time. Promotion through the playoffs was only the beginning. Soon, Rayo defeated Barcelona home and away in the same league campaign, proof that Iraola had wagered his entire managerial reputation on courage. And for the first time, football was beginning to believe him. Bournemouth was never supposed to become the place where English football discovered its next elite manager. When Iraola arrived in 2023, many believed his aggressive football would be exposed over a full Premier League season. Instead, the opposite happened. His pressing became sharper, his players braver, and the club collected the highest Premier League points total in its history. The doubts that had followed him from Spain were no longer loud enough to drown out the evidence on the pitch.
Then came the afternoon that changed everything. The final whistle against Manchester City sounded, but for a heartbeat, the Vitality Stadium seemed suspended in silence, as if nobody quite trusted what the scoreboard was saying. Then the noise crashed down from every stand. Scarves flew into the air. Players collapsed onto the grass. Bournemouth had earned a 1-1 draw that secured European qualification for the first time in the club's 92-year history. Iraola did not sprint across the pitch. He embraced one member of his coaching staff, exchanged a few quiet words with captain Adam Smith, and only then turned to acknowledge the supporters who had stayed long after the whistle. It was a small gesture. It revealed everything about him. Recognition soon arrived from the highest places. Pep Guardiola, a coach whose compliments are usually measured with extraordinary care, admitted that the most modern football he had watched was the version Bournemouth were producing under Iraola. The praise mattered because it came from a rival who had spent 90 minutes trying to solve the very problems Iraola's system created. The rumours grew louder. Chelsea monitored him. Tottenham considered him. Crystal Palace and AC Milan were repeatedly linked as admirers. Every press conference invited the same question about his future. His answer barely changed. He refused to discuss the next job, while Bournemouth were still fighting their season, insisting that his attention belonged only to the players sitting beside him in that dressing room. That restraint became its own statement. And when Liverpool searched for the man capable of rebuilding a champion after Arne Slot's dismissal in the summer of 2026, they looked beyond celebrity, beyond medals, and beyond reputation. They chose the coach who had already convinced football's toughest judge, the game itself. The next challenge was no longer proving he belonged. It was surviving expectations that could swallow almost anyone. Liverpool was not Bournemouth. Every draw would become a headline. Every team selection would be dissected. Replacing the club's most influential figure of the modern era while inheriting a squad weakened by key departures meant there would be little patience if the first difficult run arrived. One defeat at Anfield could trigger questions that had never followed him on the South Coast. Was he simply too small for a giant? Iraola's response never became theatrical. When journalists suggested he had performed a miracle at Bournemouth, he quietly rejected the label. He redirected the conversation toward the players, insisting that coaches provide ideas, but football only comes alive when players are trusted with the freedom to make decisions. Even after famous victories, he rarely lingered in front of the cameras. The dressing room always came first. That philosophy traveled with him. The journey from a little-known Basque captain to Liverpool manager also reshaped how young coaches viewed their own possibilities. Across the Basque coaching tradition, particularly those emerging from the football cultures of Athletic Bilbao and Real Sociedad, Iraola became evidence that elite management no longer belonged only to decorated superstars. A local education, a clear tactical identity, and years of patient craftsmanship could now compete with global celebrity. His greatest legacy may never be a trophy. It may be the belief he quietly planted in the next generation, that football's biggest doors can still open for those who spend years mastering the smallest details before anyone is watching. Andoni Iraola's greatest achievement may never fit inside a trophy cabinet. His legacy lives in a quieter place. The belief that a forgotten right-back with only 6 caps for Spain, who never left the Basque football tradition until the age of 33, could eventually earn the trust of Liverpool, not by changing who he was, but by refusing to abandon the football he believed in. One English football writer reluctantly described Iraola as football's post-Pep tactical revolution. The striking part was not the comparison. It was the reason behind it. Iraola never chased the spotlight. He simply kept building teams whose football demanded attention before their coach ever did. That is why the image worth remembering is not the celebration. It is the moment after Bournemouth secured Europe, when the stadium finally erupted. Yet Iraola first embraced a member of his staff, exchanged a few quiet words with Adam Smith, and only then walked toward the supporters. That pause tells the whole story, because Iraola's career was never built on having the biggest budget, the loudest reputation, or the safest ideas. It was built on repeating one conviction, from the training pitches of Antiguoco to the touchline at Anfield, that an identity is only real when you are willing to protect it long before anyone else believes it is worth following.